This is the Wired Educator Podcast, episode 259, Lifted to Lead. My interview with Dr. Stefan Bean, a superintendent in Orange County, California, guiding the lives of over 450,000 students. We talk about his leadership journey, and it is one of the most inspiring and courageous journeys I've ever heard, ever. We talk about leadership, we talk about service, education, and his new book, Lifted to Lead. You're going to love it.
Welcome to the Wired Educator Podcast, where it's all about becoming a better educator now so you can make a greater impact and enjoy a higher quality lifestyle. And now, your host, Kelly Croy.
Welcome to the Wired Educator Podcast, episode 259. I'm your host, Kelly Croy, and today I'm joined by the incredible Dr. Stefan Bean. He is the superintendent of Orange County, California, who oversees the education of over 450,000 students. Dr. Bean shares his absolutely amazing journey and insights from his brand new book, Lifted to Lead. It's a story of resilience and leadership unlike anything that you've ever heard. I am so excited for the takeaways from today's episode regarding empathy-driven leadership and seeing the potential in every single student. It's going to absolutely change the way you walk through your hallways at school every single day for the rest of your career and life. But first, there's a few things I want to tell you about. It was a great week to be a Wired educator. This week, I had a fantastic interview with Mark Begley. Mark is the superintendent at Van Wert Schools in Ohio, and that episode will publish soon, and you won't want to miss it. Mark has such a unique perspective on having served as a graduate from that school, a teacher at that school, a coach at that school, a principal at that school, Van Wert, and now the superintendent of that very district. I learned so much from Mark about the nuance and heart required to be a great superintendent. It was also a great week because I got to play a shark for a middle school Shark Tank. It was so much fun to sit along other community leaders and hear the innovative and sometimes wild and brilliant ideas that kids come up with for our future. Our future really is in good hands. Additionally, I traveled to a nearby school with my superintendent to present on the leadership and culture work that we're doing in our district. We met some incredible leaders, and I truly hope we made a lasting impact on their school, their community, and their future. Finally, I've been busy scheduling speaking engagements for the upcoming season with conferences and schools and other organizations, and I would love the opportunity to speak at your event and help your team level up. Please reach out to me at kelly@kellycroy.com to learn more about my keynotes, my workshop, and my topics. Now, let's get to my amazing interview with Dr. Stefan Bean. He joins me from Orange County, California, and his life story from being a refugee from the Vietnam War to becoming a top educational leader is nothing short of miraculous. Dr. Stefan Bean has dedicated the past 28 years to serving Southern California communities as a teacher, as a principal, and as an administrator. In June 2024, he was unanimously appointed as Orange County's 12th Superintendent of Schools. His personal experiences as an English language arts learner and a student with a disability have deeply influenced his philosophy, fueling a passion for supporting marginalized students. Born in Saigon and brought to the United States through Operation Babylift, Dr. Bean overcame polio and the foster care system to eventually earn his doctorate and lead one of the largest student county populations in the country. It's my honor, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Stefan Bean and celebrate his new book, Lifted to Lead. Thanks for joining us. Here we go. This is the Wired Educator Podcast. My guest today is Dr. Stefan Bean. He has an incredible story to share with us and an incredible message. He's got a brand new book out. He is the superintendent of the county, Orange County, California.
That's correct.
Over 450,000 students' lives are under his care and guidance. And after reading his bio, they couldn't have a better role model and a better leader in front of them. It's my honor to introduce to you and share the story of Dr. Stefan Bean. Welcome to the Wired Educator Podcast.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, typically in an interview, I just kind of do a little bit of backstory on how someone became an educator or administrator. But your story is so unique, so powerful. It just reading the little bit of the bio, it's got the hair standing up on the back of my neck. So I know you can't share your entire life story, but if you can take us back in time, you were a refugee from another country who became a very influential educator. I was wondering if you could just kind of share a bit of that experience and what it means to the kids that you help.
Sure, of course. So a lot of people ask me, so how did you get an education? And the typical answer is, well, I started as a teacher. That is true, although that is true. Actually, my story began when I came over from Vietnam in 1975 to meet the Beans. I was born in Vietnam in 71, contracted polio at the age of 2 because there was not enough polio vaccinations to go around. My parents then my natural parents abandoned me on the streets of Saigon, and an orphanage took me in. And then in 75, Operation Babylift, through President Ford's mission to airlift over 3,000 Vietnamese refugees to the United States to be placed in foster care or adopted. So on April 6, 1975, I remember the day very vividly. It was so chaotic. The orphanage staff and the MP soldiers and the staff tried to get these babies on these planes. The day it was so chaotic that they put my braces and my records on one plane out, put me on another plane. But as fate would have it, the plane that I was supposed to be on actually took off and it crashed. And over 100 people died that day, including about 93 orphans that day.
Wow.
So I made it safely to the United States, during a flight after that. And that's where I meet the Beans. So Judy Bean is an amazing woman. She had the biggest heart and biggest love and compassion for the most vulnerable kids. She and Greg took in over 100 foster kids in the time I lived at home.
Wow.
They adopted 10 of those foster kids, including myself. Many of us had disabilities or were abused. And so my mom taught me at an early age to have a heart and compassion for the most vulnerable. And then my dad was a sixth grade teacher. He was a sixth grade teacher for 30 years, same classroom, same grade level. And he taught me, he said, Stefan, if you're going to overcome your disability and the fact that English is your second language, then you need to prioritize education. And he said, education will unlock the potential in you, but more powerful, he said, education will unlock the potential of others through you. And so that's how I got into education.
He knew. Yeah,
He knew.
He knew.
Very prophetic. He knew.
What an incredibly powerful story, and what a great opportunity for the students in your county. So as a leader, your journey has, I read your bio, really shapes your leadership style. And I loved how you openly declare that you have the back of every student in your county. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I mean, how old were you when you came to the United States from Vietnam, and you had physical challenges? What other challenges did you face and have to overcome?
Yeah. So, it's funny that you read that. Yeah, there was a quote in the paper when I became the county superintendent, and I said to the paper and the reporter and all students in Orange County, look, I have your back because I understand what it's like to be an English learner. I understand what it's like to be a student with disability. I understand what it's like to go through the foster care system. And so I want our students, the most vulnerable in our community, understand that I've got their back. That started because, when I grew up, I didn't do very well in school, as you can imagine. New country, new culture, new language. And I often actually missed lots of school because I was in therapy and surgeries. And so I did not do very well, needless to say. But it did take, finally, and Kelly, we can all remember that one teacher or educator that's whispered in our ears. And for me, that was Mr. Geisinger. He said, Stefan, you have this gift. He goes, I don't care the fact that you're in a wheelchair or you're barely speaking English, but you have the gift of gab. He noticed that I like to talk a lot. Yeah. So what he would do is he would harness that strength. And we talk about this in the book, that as adults, we need to inspire potential in our kids and our students. And he inspired that potential of communication within me he said, you don't need to take any tests or write any papers. Just give oral presentations this whole year. And that's what I
Wow.
did my 6th grade year. So
Yeah.
incredible.
And that was really tapping into your true intelligence
Yeah.
and your abilities, not the fact of whether or not you could complete a paper, English written examination. I'm curious, in my role as director of innovation instruction for Port Clinton City Schools, I travel to all of our buildings, and boy, we might be like, I don't know, we're pretty small in comparison to your county, but we have kids with challenges of all different sorts. And I just think your message, I mean, a lot of times it seems like we're measuring the deficit, not the potential. And
Yes. Yes.
I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit, because I can just tell from your speech and your heart, you're the opposite of that.
Yeah. Kelly, only a really good educator would have the insight to ask that question, because you're absolutely right. Oftentimes, as educators, we can look at a child through their weaknesses or deficits. My teachers in elementary schools saw a child in a wheelchair and figured that we need to pull that child out and have one-on-one and not necessarily include them into the day-to-day activity. Or I had other teachers saw that my English was broken, and so when I got frustrated, they didn't know how to care for me. But it took Mr. Geisinger, who saw me through an asset perspective, right? A strength perspective. And he saw that I had this gift of communication and he cultivated it. And because of that, as you can imagine, it built the confidence for me to communicate and give speeches. And it also built my content knowledge, because whatever I spoke, I learned. And because of that, I was asked to speak in front of 14. It was pretty incredible.
I think we lost your video, but that is an incredible story, and we're going to keep going on with the interview, because the Wired Educator podcast is mostly audio anyways, and you are a great storyteller. So this gift of gab, you've kept it really well.
Yeah, that is true.
And I think oral communications, do you feel that you're eventually there was a time to catch up, or did you just, in the other areas that you weren't progressing, that school was asking for you to progress in, or did you just excel in certain areas that overcame those? If that question makes sense to you.
Yeah, definitely. You can still hear me, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. All right. So, yeah, I think because of that moment when I stepped down those steps on my crutches after my speech at Washington, D.C., I looked up and I got this rousing standing ovation from 15,000 people.
Wow.
What that told me was that I did have a voice, right? I did have a voice that I could speak about my experiences as a person with disability. And so that set me on a trajectory to then achieving and doing well in high school and then going to USC on a full ride scholarship. And our students, that's all they need, is they need the belief in them. But more importantly, they need us to come and help them empower their strengths. So we can recognize their strengths, but we have to actually empower their strengths so that they can use it.
I love that. I love that so much, because I think so many times I look at students in the hallway. I met a Apple Distinguished Educator, Jordan Zimmerman. She's from Ohio, and she was unable to communicate with others. She has autism until she was about 18, and she was given an iPad. And now she not only has a PhD, but she's writing the national standards for autism for the entire country. And after hearing her story and after hearing your story, I know that I'll never be able to walk through a school building again without seeing every student, like, regardless of how they tested or what their grades are or whatever, what else is locked in there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really want to dig in and learn about, especially for some of our students who cannot orally communicate with us, how can we find out the true potential of each of our students? I mean, I know that's the billion-dollar question, but do you have any tips or advice for us?
Yeah, Kelly, I think it really is about knowing that student more intimate. And I think the only way to do that is build a relationship. And the only way to do that is to really put them in situations where you can interact with them. And all of a sudden you may realize that, wow, a child has a gift of artistry, or a child can actually communicate using, to your point, like an iPad or a touchpad, or we put AI in front of them, right? So there are lots of different tools that people with disabilities can have access to. to support their communication, and in return, of course, then we begin to understand what strengths they have. And so we have the tools, and I think as educators, we first begin to look through the lens of students have assets, but we can't find those strengths until we actually build a relationship with them.
Yeah. Are there any specific guidelines that you give educators and administrators as look-fors or ways to do that? When I go into a classroom for teachers, I always try to look for what is working well or what's awesome first is usually typically the way I go. But I'm just
Yeah.
wondering with students, like, should there be a question on my mind? Certainly not like what's wrong here or what's lacking, but do you have any guidance on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, which is when you go in and you observe, what you're doing is you're first observing not the teachers, but you're observing what the students are doing, right?
Yeah.
And if you feel a child is engaged in a particular activity, whatever the modality the teacher is delivering the lesson, then you begin to understand, okay, they're connecting with this particular modality, or they're engaged with this particular lesson. And that's what teachers have to be attuned to. Is like, yes, try lessons in different ways. And then as you try lessons in different ways, see which lessons kids engage in. And I
Yeah.
think that as outside observers, I always go into classrooms and I look first at what students are doing.
Yeah. I love how you honored the teacher who let you present orally to the class and share what you were learning. I think that's fantastic. And I would like to give more educators permission to do those sort of things. We live in such a high stakes environment, right, in education. And I think we need to, I'm not saying we do away with the test or anything like that, but it shouldn't be the almighty hand of and weight of the test. There's got to be other ways to determine how we know what students know and what they're learning. And I think project-based learning and
Yeah.
other things like that are more important, right?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you is that there are, look, if we all have different strengths and we all have different ways to engage, so therefore you need to actually assess our success in that approach. We don't
Right.
all succeed with the paper pencil tests. Many of us don't, but there are multiple ways to measure the engagement of a child and the success of a child. By the way, in county, our mission is to lead the nation in college and career. And what we realize is that not every child wants to go to and through college, but so therefore you have to give them opportunities to get a good career outside of high school.
Right.
So we really want to bring back the trades. We really want to bring back career technical education as ways to meet the different approach or different engagement levels of our students.
Yeah. It's great to speak with you. You have such a fascinating story. There's so much I can learn from you, but also being so far away, it's interesting to hear what your initiatives are, what your challenges are, what your victories are. And I just kind of wonder if some of them are similar to us here in Ohio. So we are noticing a great struggle at a young age with literacy. I think it's nationwide. We're
Hmm.
seeing some real severe behavior in the early grades. And of course, a lot of absenteeism. I'm wondering if you're seeing those same things on the West Coast.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are. We're seeing the exact same things where one in three students is reading at grade level. That's unacceptable. 4 out of 10 kids are at math level, which is unacceptable. We have to look at really, although we've improved since the pandemic with chronic absenteeism, it's still pretty high. I think
Yeah.
we also have to look at really, you, Kelly, being a educator, understand that really we have to look at does a child feel safe to learn? Does a child feel to have enough food, a home, a stable home? So we have to look at the mental health of a child. And as you know, since 2008, we've seen a huge increase of mental health challenges among our
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
So the issues that you are sharing, we also share. And I think it's because of mental health challenges, the pandemic, chronic absenteeism, all of these things have hit a peak together. And as educators now today, boy, we've got our work cut out.
Yeah, we do. We do. I just think of some of the challenges that students face in some of our younger grades. and then I see your life story, and I would just love to have you come to our building, uh, for the kids, but for the teachers
Yeah.
as well, because, I can't imagine kinda the hair on the back of my neck kinda stood up when I read your bio about what it meant to you to be named superintendent. I don't want to, be disrespectful, but I just would imagine a lot of people early in your life probably didn't see that coming, right? So, I wonder if you
Oh,
could speak
listen,
to what that meant to you.
yeah, for sure. There's a short story in the book that describes my experiences in school with a disability, and that's even back in the 70s and 80s, kids didn't understand, and so I had quite often students, mainly just a group of a few boys, bully me. Although at the time I didn't know it was bullying, so they would
Yeah,
say, "You can't play that game. You can't play Foursquare. You shouldn't. You don't belong here. You belong."
yeah.
In a crippled school and things like that. And I remember one incident going into a classroom where, one of those boys pushed me against the wall, slapped me across the face and said, "You get out of here, you crippled boy. You don't belong here."
Oh,
And
wow.
it just, but you know what? I was so resilient and strong, and I let it roll off my back. But I had people around me that really instilled in me on how to overcome those kinds of challenges. And so today, our kids face very similar challenges, whether it's cyberbullying or actual bullying on campus, that they really need to understand. We as adults need to build within them the idea that, their lives matter. They do have rightful presence, that they do have strengths and that they contribute to the community. But to answer your question, by being sworn in as the county superintendent of schools, by the way, the first uh, Vietnamese disabled superintendent Orange County. 43 years later, I would have Mr. G swear me in as
Oh,
only the 12th, yeah, as only the 12th county superintendent of schools since 1889. So I think that alone says a lot, right?
that is awesome. That's great. So, you reconnected, or did you always stay in touch with your teacher?
Yeah, I always stayed in touch with Mr. G. He was just that one special teacher. And the moment I was, appointed to this role, I said I knew who to call, and I called him up, and he came.
That's fantastic. And so, the title of your book, I believe, is Lifted to Lead.
Yes, sir.
And it's through Connect Ed with Casa and Associates, and we can probably find copies on Amazon and other places as well, right?
Yep, yep, that's correct. Yep.
And I'm sure, Dr. Bean, you travel and share your message with audiences across the nation, maybe even globally.
Well, I'd love to do global, but yes, across the nation for sure. The book
Yeah,
just came out about 8 weeks ago, so it's been very successful. And I think I we wrote this book because now more than ever, we really need to show people in this. Well, I'll say, my goodness, a world in which we have so much polarity, that there's still hope, and that you
yeah,
can overcome these challenges, and that really our job as leaders is to lift individuals, because when we lift individuals, we lift communities. So, and what's described in that book is that's what communities and people did for me. They lifted me through all of my challenges to the point where they would lift me to become Orange County Superintendent of Schools.
yeah. Wow. Such a powerful story. I can't wait to get my hands on it and read it. And I'll be sure to have a link in the show notes for the listeners and viewers of the Wired Educator Podcast to link up to and click and grab your own copy. And I'm sure, Dr. Bean, that you live by some tenets or some principles or codes of leadership that provide awesome service to others. I'm wondering if you could share one or two with our listeners today of how you
Yeah,
lead.
thank you. So I lead through that framework that's in the book, which is the lifted leadership framework. And each letter represents a certain leadership value that I've learned. And I'll just talk about the first
Okay.
two, the L and the I. Growing up in a family of 12 brothers and sisters, my parents made sure we sat around that dinner table every night with a three-course meal. And the reason why
Wow.
was because they knew we would come together as, I had a set of twin brothers with autism, had three Black sisters, two Latino brothers. So they knew we would come together with our own different experiences of the day and be able to share. And what I learned from that is we need to listen to one another. because we learn. So that's the L, is like we must, as leaders, listen and learn. And then we must inspire potential. And that's the I.
Yeah.
And that's what, that's what we do as educators every day, is we look for that potential in somebody and we cultivate it and inspire it. So those are just a couple sneak peeks. And then, of
Yeah.
course, the rest is in the book.
Well, I'm going to grab it, and I'm glad you could share that with us. Boy, I can't wait to hear the others and read them, because those two are so good. I listened to you, and I'm half smiling, and I got a tear in the corner of my eye at the same time.
Nice, man.
What have you seen in your lifetime that surprised you? I can't imagine anything, but I listened to your story, and I graduated from high school in '87, and I wasn't a scholarly student, maybe until I went off to college, and then some of my professors might argue even that. But I know one thing in education that we've gotten way better at, and like in the '80s and '90s, man, there was really exclusion in the classroom.
Mm,
Students with physical challenges and
mhm,
others.
mhm,
They were invisible. They were made invisible by our
mhm.
schools, placed in special rooms throughout the
Yep.
building, and that just makes me sad. So that's one
Mm,
thing we've kind of gotten right. What are some
mhm.
things that you're seeing that's working, or things that have surprised you, or things that you're really, really proud of? I'm just curious, because wow, you've seen a lot.
Yeah, even though, it's interesting. You're right. I have seen a lot and I've gone through a lot, but so has everybody. We all have stories. We've all have experiences. And I think that what is always surprises me is, no matter how difficult things can be for people, that there's always a way out when the community rallies around. So let me just give you an example. So in high school, I had my classrooms on the second floor and there was no elevator. So when I'd come to school in my wheelchair, there I am facing these steps. And before I know it, I see four people, or my friends, just lift me up those stairs to
That's
get to the
cool.
second floor. But you know what they said? Because I asked them later, why did you do that? And they said, Stefan, we didn't do it because we pitied you. We didn't feel sorry for you. We did it because we wanted you to get where we were going. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it
So
is beautiful.
what gives me hope is that we as humanity can do that.
Yeah, that is a powerful story as well. There are some rotten people in the world,
Sure.
but I think, unfortunately, they grab all the headlines, and I
Yeah.
do think there's more good people in the world. It's just the headline stealing bad people. We just got to tell our story. I'm so happy to share yours, because it is a beautiful story. I'm inspired, man. I'm just,
Thank you,
I
man.
can't wait until our paths cross. It's interesting. One of the challenges this year that we've come across, interesting enough, has been artificial intelligence, and how,
Mm,
it's kind of, in some ways it's fun, and, makes us think a little bit differently, and we can certainly get creative with it. But I'm
mm,
really fascinated for some of our higher performing students academically. There's starting to be the question of, is that their work? Are we
mm,
really
mm,
measuring learning?
mm,
Because
mm,
we got some trust issues with what they're turning in. I think taking a look at that and looking at all students now, it almost levels the playing field of what is learning again. Because if we can't trust what we're sending home, we need to do that for everybody. I don't know if that made sense or not, but
yeah.
I think in a weird way, it's making us re-examine what we do in person and what we measure as learning.
Absolutely correct. And I think part of our work at in this role is to really look at AI through the lens of how do we help students to use it and access it ethically and
Yeah.
responsibly. And the only way to do that, though, is to actually help adults understand, because there are thousands of AI tools now. So we have to help the educators vet the proper tools and then train the students which tools are appropriate for certain assignments. But I think it starts with us as adults and leaders and educators, is that we have to lead the way for our students. And what that means is we as adults have to be okay with it, of course, use these tools and remind everybody that AI is just actually an assistant. It doesn't replace us. And then once we become familiar with it, we can then use it ethically and responsibly to teach our kids. And then we can become more creative in the kind of assignments that we assign where kids are going to use AI anyways.
Absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. Dr. Bean, I love to let my guests have the kind of last inspiring word to our listeners, and then I end with a little fun speed round. So you're out there in beautiful, sunny California, and here we are mid-February in Ohio, and we did have some sunshine yesterday, but it's a little bit bleak out. And we have listeners from all over the world. You have an awesome book, Lifted to Lead. You've given us a lot to work with tonight. But I'm just wondering, at this time in the school year, if you could provide a message to our listeners about how to approach the remaining days of the year and the impact that they have in front of them.
Wow, Kelly, that's a great question. So the message I would give, and you're talking about the message to educators or families or
Yeah, just listening to the podcast, this is a tough month for teachers.
Yeah, to my fellow educators, I empathize for you. Look, the next several months when students get back from spring break and then they're hit with the state assessments and we're just trying to finish out the year, just remember that you matter to a student and that you are that Mr. Geisinger and that you will you may never know the impact that you have on a child, but just know that you're raising the next astronaut to Mars or plumber or electrician. And who knows? I mean, you may be raising the next president of the United States. And it's because of your words and your encouragement and your love. And just that will get you through and sustain you through the rest of this year.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Bean. Just some fun questions to wrap up and to help me improve as a human, an educator, a leader, and a father. I'm curious. I always ask my guests, what's one of the most influential books they've ever read? And I'm wondering if you have one on your mind that served you well.
Yeah, Bowman Deal has his book Leading with Soul, and it's just a great leadership book that as leaders we start from.
You still with me, Dr. Bean?
Start from. Yep, I am. Sorry.
Yeah. What was
all
the name of the book?
Technical issues today. My bad.
No, it's all right.
Leading with soul, right? So it's this idea that as leaders, we have to start inside. We have to lead from our heart. And when people see that we care for them, then they'll go where we go. So it's and I think that's the way I have always led is a very leading from the heart perspective, empathetic leadership and strong emotional intelligence. And I think that as leaders do that, a lot of people are going to follow.
Yeah. You've been faced with many challenges and overcome them all. And I think it's almost a prerequisite for greatness to have those types of challenges. I could certainly name a couple of advantages that you had with an awesome foster parent and an amazing educator. I'm wondering if there was a mindset of yours or a philosophy or a belief that you had that kind of gave you an advantage in life that you could share with us.
That's a great question. People have always asked me, hey, how did you get through those really major surgeries? One surgery was a straightening of my spinal cords because I had scoliosis. So they had to go in and actually put these rods. And I was on a body cast for 9 straight months from neck to ankle. And I remember how I got through that was I always had hope for the future. I always had hope for that day after I was out of my cast or the day after I was out of surgery because I knew it was going to be better. So I always tell people, you know what? You can transform yourself and others around and organizations when you have hope, but you have to have authentic, realistic hope. And so that's what I would share with people.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And finally, I'm just curious, we touched a little bit on AI and I'm kind of a gadget guy. Is there anything that you find just incredibly useful in your life, whether it's an AI prompt or a specific tool or a gadget, or maybe something old school that just you're really happy that you discovered it?
Well, I'm happy to discover my role as county superintendent is the use of certainly AI. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Listen, one of the best things that I use AI for is when I upload lots and lots of documents that has technical and really nuanced language that I need to, keep up with. And it would take me weeks to read and then put it all up there and then actually start asking analysis of all those documents. And that's pretty incredible. So that's, creating, I didn't learn for the first time at ChatGPT. You can create your own GPTs, and creating your own GPTs is basically doing what I just said. download a bunch of documents on one particular topic, and then it will now be able to answer and help you in that particular area.
That's really cool. One of the ways I've really been enjoying using AI is for a lot of my questions and queries, I create a board of directors. And sometimes I use guests that I've had on the podcast. So you might be one of my board of directors on one of my future questions. I tell it about my guests and I ask them, what advice would they give me on this? I think you'd be a great board of directors in my life. So thank you. All right.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks for the compliment.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Bean, I've taken up a lot of your time. I'm going to follow your journey. I'll include links on how to follow you into the show notes because I know many of our listeners will want to do so as well as a link to your book, Lifted to Lean. I'm so thankful that you spent time with us this evening to level up, to make a difference in the lives of students. I think you're awesome, and what a powerful story. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, Kelly. Appreciate you, man.
What an incredible story. Every time I hear Dr. Bean speak about being lifted by his community, whether it was literally from Saigon to the United States, or whether it was his friends carrying his wheelchair up the stairs, or a teacher seeing his gift of gab when others saw a deficit, it reminds me why we do this work, why we are educators, why we are leaders. We aren't just teaching subjects, we are lifting human beings. I highly encourage you to pick up Dr. Bean's book, Lifted to Lead. I'll have a link in the show notes and to all his social media and ways to contact him at wirededucator.com and kellycroy.com. If this episode inspired you, please share it with a colleague who needs to hear this message of hope and potential. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an interview. I have a fantastic episode coming up with Mark Begley, who is the superintendent at Van Wert Schools in Ohio. They have a project-based learning program that is all grades. It's amazing. And he's an incredible superintendent. I learned a lot about leadership from that episode. And then I also got to interview Mark Perna about his book, Answering Why. And he talks about career skills and skill trees and the career tree. It's incredible work. I got to hear Mark share a keynote at the start of the year, and that is also a fantastic interview. So make sure you subscribe. Please check the show notes to links to everything mentioned in this interview and pre-roll. If you would like your book, product, service, conference, or website mentioned or highlighted in the pre-roll, email me at kelly@kellycroy.com. And please visit my website, kellycroy.com or wirededucator.com, because leadership matters. Let's give the world something worth following.
Thanks for listening to the Wired Educator Podcast at www.wirededucator.com.